Hi there, Dr. Gila here with a quick note before we get started today to invite you to join the waiting list for my program, The Regulation Reset. This is a small group, high touch program to help you feel less reactive and overwhelmed and more capable of handling all the hard stuff in parenting without snapping or losing it. When you join the waitlist, you get VIP perks and discounts and early access. Go to parentingwithconnection.com/waitlist. That's parentingwithconnection.com/waitlist. And now, on to the show. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Gila, and it is officially 2026. I have a short episode for you today. In last week's episode, I told you that I had the song "It's the End of the World as We Know It" stuck in my head. This week, I keep thinking about a song from The Sound of Music, which was my favorite movie when I was a kid. And it's Do Re Mi, and it starts with, "You start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. When you read, you begin with ABC, and when you sing, you begin with Do Re Mi," which for this podcast leads to the question, when you're parenting, where do you begin? And I think that one of the most powerful, impactful places to begin is with regulation, our own emotion regulation as parents. I know it's not super sexy or exciting, but really this is the groundwork. This is what allows us to show up for our kids and support them in the way that they need and deserve, and to show up for ourselves in the way that we need and deserve, and really everyone else in our lives. Welcome to Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, the podcast that honors your messy reality. It's the support you crave without the usual emotional landmines. I'm your host, Dr. Gila, and I promise I will never tell you to just tag your partner in. Before we start, quick reminder. While I am a licensed psychologist and a certified coach, this podcast is not coaching and it's not therapy, and it's not a replacement for medical or psychological advice. It is for educational and informational purposes only. All right, let's dive in. So, what is regulation? I do have an episode. It's episode 2. I'll link to it below in the show notes, that gives you a little overview of the way that I think of emotion regulation. And you're going to be hearing me talk a lot more about it because this is the focus of my upcoming program. And I have an upcoming free workshop all about this. So stay tuned. I'll put the link in the show notes to sign up for the waitlist for the program and to sign up for the workshop when signups are open. If you're listening to this after February 2026, you can still click on the links and I will make sure they point you towards the next thing that is available to sign up for. But today, I just want to talk briefly about why I really think that this is the place to start. And honestly, it's a place that is important to keep coming back to and to keep giving attention to. And I want to start with 2 little visuals to explain why I think it's so important. And the first does relate to that framework that I have for how I think about regulation. Again, episode 2 is going to go into this in more depth, but really quickly, the idea is that each of us has an internal metaphorical sink. And when that sink is really full, just a few more drops of water are going to make it overflow. And that overflow state is dysregulation. So this is when you might snap, you might yell, you might say or do things that you later regret. And I think we all are familiar with that shame spiral that comes after we snap or we lose it. When your sink is emptier, the same drops of water that made it overflow in that first scenario are not going to lead you to snap and lose it. You're going to be able to handle it, and you can handle more. And so self-regulation is the part of the process where we take care of our sink, where we make sure that our sink is not all the way full, because when it's really full, it's even harder to keep yourself from doing or saying things that you later regret. And this is important for all humans, right? To tend to our sinks. But as parents, it's even more important. And I would argue the unfortunate reality is that as single parents, it's maybe even more important because one of the things that can fill your sink really quickly, fill anyone's sink really quickly, is somebody else's sink overflowing into it. And this is what happens when our kids are having a hard time, when their sink is overflowing, when they're having a meltdown, a tantrum, a rage, even a power struggle, or anything that they're struggling with. Their sink may be overflowing. And if our sink is already in a state of overflow or even really full or almost all the way full, then our sink is going to start overflowing really quickly. And before you know it, their sink is overflowing into ours, our sink is overflowing into theirs, and it just becomes a huge wet puddle on the floor. So, part of why it's so important to work on our own emotion regulation and tend to our own metaphorical sinks is so that we have some space to handle the overflow from our kids' sinks when they overflow. And then, of course, another piece of it is that we are modeling for them. Back in 2014, there was a seminal series of reports out of Duke University in collaboration with the Office of the Administration for Children and Families. And one of the conclusions that they drew in one of their reports is, and I'm quoting here, self-regulation serves as the foundation for lifelong functioning. Self-regulation serves as the foundation for lifelong functioning. And I think it's so true. I often say that the two most important core skills for interpersonal relationships are self-regulation and communication. And of course, they go hand in hand. And, really, self regulation is one of the building blocks, like reading, writing, and math for academics. Self regulation is one of those foundational building blocks that when we learn, when we have these skills, it allows us to build other skills and to function in day to day life. Now, self-regulation is not a one and done skill. It's not like learning to tie your shoes. This is something that is always a work in progress, and it is a skill that is important for us to help our children learn and develop. And that process really starts with us working on our own self regulation, modeling that self regulation skill and the work, the process, right? That growth process for our kids. And so that's another reason why it really is so important as parents for us to work on this. And then I just want to share one more visual that drives this point home as well. And that is the visual of a tree. So I like to think of the parenting journey, the parenting process as a tree. And the roots of the tree are the parent piece. There's a lot involved in this, but a big piece of that is understanding your triggers, your what you're bringing into parenting in general, and into those tough parenting moments, understanding your own stress response, and of course, building the skills to help you stay grounded in those really tough moments so that you can support your child. And if you think about the roots of the tree, when you have really healthy, deeply rooted roots, deeply grounded roots, they might be all knotted and twisted and gnarly, but if they are strong and deeply grounded, then when the wind blows, when there is a storm that blows, that tree is still going to be able to remain standing. Those roots really help ground not just the roots, but the whole tree. And that is true in your family as a system, where you, as the parent, and your ability to stay grounded and centered, especially in those tough moments, is what will help your family system keep from sort of swaying and toppling over in those strong winds. So that's another visual of why I think this is such an important skill and an important starting point. I want to be very clear that I am not saying that the parent's emotion regulation is the entire piece. It's just one part of the tree, right? The rest of the tree is super important. In fact, episode 6 of the podcast, which I'll also link to in the show notes below, is called 2 Reasons You Can't Calm Your Way Out of the Hard Stuff, which is really about why self-regulation is not the whole picture, right? So I want to be clear about that. This is not saying that you as the parent, that your self-regulation is the reason things are hard, is the reason your kid is having meltdowns and tantrums and whatever other challenges they're having. It is not the whole picture, but it is one of the biggest things that is within our control to work on. And it is an incredibly powerful starting point, no matter what else is going on. And again, it is also something that is always a work in progress. I am not perfectly self-regulated. Nobody that I know is perfectly self-regulated. I often like to say, unless you're the Dalai Lama who doesn't have kids. So there you go. I think that everyone could use a self-regulation, emotion regulation tune-up every now and then. And certainly if this is something that is a significant struggle for you, then really starting here makes sense. And so I'm going to be talking more in the upcoming weeks and the upcoming episodes about emotion regulation. I do have a program coming up that is not open for registration yet, but the waitlist is open. And when you get on the waitlist, you become a VIP, and that means that you're going to get early access, first dibs to spots, and you're also going to get special discounts and bonuses. So I'll put the link below for that. And I have a free workshop coming up in February, so stay tuned about that. Also about emotion regulation, to give you some practical tips of where to get started with this really critical, important skill. So I'll put all those links below. And if you're listening after February 2026, no worries. I will have other programs and options for you that I will adjust the links below and make sure it points you in the direction of the next great offering. So that's my invitation to you and my thought to ponder for you for the beginning as we go into the Gregorian year of 2026 is in the parenting journey to turn inward. And I will say, a lot of people this time of year are doing a lot of reflecting, which I think is beautiful, and re-centering and reprioritizing, really sort of taking a look at what do you want your life to look like. And I would argue that all of that is actually part of the bigger picture emotion regulation process. So again, I'm going to talk a lot more about that, and I will see you in the next episode. That's it for this episode. I am so glad you found your way here. And remember, even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. You've got this.